welcome to Up Close with Carlos Sang, celebrating art, entertainment, and the human spirit. Welcome to another episode of Up Close with Carlos Sang. My next guest is one of my favorite performers on the scene right now. She is about to return to the role of Cassie in A Chorus Line and has previously starred in productions of Anything Goes, The Drifters Girls, and also Assassins. It's a huge delight to be able to introduce the wonderful Mercedes Dyer. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. That's so nice. What a nice introduction. I'll take that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been nearly 3 years, since you last did a chorus line in Leicester Curve. How has it been coming back to the show again and like revisiting this part too?
It's been a real ride. I think it's the sort of show that you can never be too prepared for, and I was definitely underprepared. I had a whole incident where I kind of burnt my leg, so I wasn't able to train and get ready. But I think coming back into the room with like such a supportive group of people, the amazing Kane and Nikolai and David Shrubsall and all the people that I knew before was like the perfect support group that I needed to kind of get me going through this. But to return to it is something like incredible because these bodies definitely get older, and it's the sort of show where you want to feel as young as possible, but at the same time I think it is true testament to the piece and how, regardless of your age, your size, where you are in your life, that there's always a passion deep within you that will make it happen, that will make sure that you can do the job and you can find something within yourself to do the task at hand.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like when you finished doing the show, at the end of 2021, did you feel like you were done with this part, or was there still more that you wanted to explore with Cassie?
No, I definitely wasn't done with it, but it was the sort of thing, because it was such a kind of like uncertain time with the pandemic and COVID, it was every day was literally a gift to be able to do the part because we didn't know what was going to happen, if we were going to get shut down, if someone's going to get COVID and we wouldn't be able to do the show. So it really was, even if there weren't that many people in the audience, it always meant that you were doing this for the people in our industry, for the fact that you were playing Cassie in a chorus line. It was something amazing to actually be able to do. So the fact that we've been able to come back to it is even more incredible because we can fine tune everything. We can kind of delve into more things. We've got new people involved in the show that you go, okay, what are they bringing to it? Because it feels completely fresh and new and not like a rerun of something that we've done before. It feels like something magical that's been revived.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like A Chorus Line has become, it's become a truly iconic show. Why do you think it,
hmm
it does mean so much to so many people, and why do you think it does keep on coming back time and time again?
I think it's because it's the story of our industry, of the theatre industry, of people in the arts that always are so resilient, that always come back to this passionate craft that sometimes isn't so giving back. I mean, when you're on stage and people applaud you and you feel like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Sometimes there are moments where it's not actually, as fulfilling as you might want it to be. But with this show, I think it's so iconic because people get into the psyche, they get into the deep, meaningful nuances of all these people that are on that stage, and the fact that we're so different. We're all so individual. There's not one person I go, oh yeah, that person's kind of like that one. No, there's every single person is an individual. And I think for the audiences, it means that they go, oh, I really get to see that person. And you discover something completely new about them every time. But then at the very end, you see how all these individuals can make such a beautiful, vast gold spectacle of a singular sensation like one. Um, but the show this time, I think, is so iconic for other reasons because Kane and Nikolai have been able to reimagine it in a way that's brand new for such an iconic traditional show that people know and love as a chorus line. It's a reimagined version, which is amazing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you've had a pretty busy few years, since 2021, doing, Assassins and Drifters Girls and Gypsy as Ali Pali. Um, Coming back to the role of Cassie now as well, do you feel like, you're approaching the role differently? And, how has, your view of this show and this role changed as well over that time?
Yeah, I think it definitely has. I think the first time you do it, you're kind of understanding what the beast of a chorus line is because I think people think they know what the show is, even people in the industry. And then you actually do it and you go, oh, it's not what I thought it was because you stand on this line and you think, oh, it's such an ensemble piece. But really, the only people that you have around you are maybe the person next to you on either side, and then maybe one along if you manage to kind of see that person as that other person steps forward. But there's people at the complete other end that I don't really see, only if they're like having their moment and I get to kind of like sit down and see it. In our version, that happens. Whereas in the old iteration of it, if you were just on that line the whole time, you definitely wouldn't see a character that's always down the other end. So I think coming back to it, I've realized, okay, I know that sometimes it's quite an isolated piece, but the moments that you can really enjoy are one. And in our version, it's when you get to kind of like all face in and see each other and kind of like experience how they're interpreting their time on the line. But coming back to it as an older person, you go, okay, sometimes there's more imposter syndrome because you're like, can I do this? Can my body do this? But also you come at it with the knowledge that sometimes when you have these highs in your career, they don't always last forever. And there are the lines that we say in the show are very true to real life in this industry because those things don't last forever. There's peaks and troughs, there's highs and lows. There's times when you're like, yes, my body feels great. And then the next day you're like, no, we need to stop. So it's all the ups and downs of everything in our industry, this craft, this career. And it's been great to come back to it and learn all of that all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the show is a very physically demanding show, as you say. How
Hmm.
challenging is it, to maintain that stamina to do, 8 shows a week, singing, dancing, acting, all of that?
Yeah, it's a lot. And I think the mental part of it is something that you just kind of to go, okay, we just give in to this because the music starts the da 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 da, and you're just like, and you just put your seatbelt on. You're like, here we go. We'll see what happens. But I think the beauty of the piece is because it's an audition, those things happen where you're on this, you're in an audition, you go, oh well, I've messed that up, so we'll just try and be better the next time, or you go, oh, I know why that didn't work out. But I think with this show, you really have to look after yourself, maintain. You have to make sure that you're warming up properly, you're cooling down properly, you're rolling. I mean, I'm holding a little trigger ball for my body at the moment just to remind me to just go and roll out because there are those things. You have to make sure, especially with this show, that you've got to drink your water because if you don't do that, there's no time in the show because you'll need to go to the toilet and you're on that stage for about 2 hours and there's no going for a toilet break. Um, but it is definitely something that is a skill, and we're not just dancers, we're not just singers in the show. We're doing all three to a high level, and also we're athletes because to be able to start the show with such an impact and so physically, to then stand still in like this open space with people watching you, and then to be able to activate your bodies again is something to really be, I don't know, marveled at is what I would say because we're wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have so much admiration for musical theatre performers. Would you say touring, also has its own challenges too? And is that something that you're particularly looking forward to as well?
It 100% does. I mean, I've just come off the tour of the Drifters Girl, and on that, it was quite a lonely, isolating time because that part is for the Drifters Girl, Faye Treadwell, that I played, is she's there talking and like leading the scenes the whole time, and then she's got these four huge songs, and then we added in a mega mix, and because there's so much talking and singing, and you have to really like go to the extremes with your voice and the emotions of being a resilient, sort of like hard done by woman. Um, it really does take its toll, and you really have to just kind of like go to bed,
Mm.
drink your water, steam all the time. There's no like, oh, I'm going to go out for a drink. I'm going to go and do like part. There's none of that. It's just like you really have to be dedicated and committed to what you're doing, which I'm all for. But sometimes you kind of need like the respite. You need to go on a holiday and kind of just live your life, not as a monk anymore. But I think that's what shows great commitment and just like wanting to do a great job and wanting people to get the best out of you when you're performing something like that. So with this tour, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how our bodies last, traveling, sitting on a train for how many hours and then having to like unfold them and creak them out to do the numbers. But I think because we've got such a great team, I think we'll all be in it together and be like, okay, who's massaging me today? Because we're going to need that.
Absolutely. I know that you're currently back at Leicester Curve as well, and I'm
Mhm.
always amazed by how vast that stage is as well. Does it feel ever, does it ever feel quite exposing as well, with being at how open it is, and especially, with this set design too?
No, it doesn't actually feel. I think there's something about the theatre. Like, I know that anyone that's worked in theatre or has been on an open stage, you just love the idea of like anything is possible because you go, oh, what are they going to dress it in? What's the set going to look like once it's finally in? So I think it's an amazing thing for audiences that have been to their local theatres to go, oh my goodness, I didn't know that's how big the stage actually was. Because when they've seen productions, there's been flies in, there's been a bit of scenery over there. So it's amazing to share that with the audience, as in what we get to see, the bare bones of things. And it's going to be really nice revisiting some of the theatres that I went to whilst I was with the Drifters Girl on tour, and new ones to go, ooh, this is what the bare bones look like of the Lowry, or Sadler as well. It's like it's going to be huge to see that, and then have all these vibrant characters filling the space, because that's what it's ultimately about. These stripped back buildings, and then all these people that manage to fill it up with their vibrancy and their life. So yeah, I'm very excited to be in these exposed spaces.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you previously worked at Leicester Curve and with Nikolai Foster on a West Side Story as well previously, and were you always like looking to to return to Leicester and to work with Nikolai too after that experience?
Oh my goodness, I adore Nikolai Foster. I auditioned for him a few times and never got further than maybe the first round. I was like, he doesn't like me. I was like, oh, And I remember going to my audition for West Side Story. I was like, I'm just here to make up the numbers. And then when I got the part of Anita, I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. And because it was such an amazing experience, and then I finally got to know who this like amazing man is, I was like, he is one of the kindest, most generous, supportive, and visionary directors that I've worked with. And I did say to someone, I was like, I always love when new people get to work with him, because they get to experience how wonderful he is. And it's like a little secret that you're like, oh my goodness, I can't wait for you to like know what he's like. And the team that we have with Ellen and Nikolai, which is the same that I had with West Side Story, I'm always like, it's so good, because it's not something that you get all the time. It's very rare, because they're both so passionate in completely different ways. Like Ellen has a huge amount of fire in her, and she's like, she never lets you rest on what you're doing. So I always love coming back to Curve, because obviously Nikolai is always here, even though he's always everywhere actually. But I always love going into the room, because I feel like I'm able to collaborate with them, and I'm able to bring sort of like my concerns or ideas to them, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, let's try that. It's never, this is my idea and you're just going to do that. It's always like, oh, okay, let's see how that feels, and I can ask them really honestly like what they think, and how it's going to serve the piece. So it's great.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds amazing. I mean, both West Side Story and The Chorus Line, they are both these, iconic shows. What are those conversations like, with the creative teams on, how to deconstruct them and make them fresh for new audiences too?
I mean, it's literally a privilege to be in the room with them, because as much as we all have our hang-ups and our anxieties and go, oh my goodness, is this like too big a task to deal with? There's always such I don't know, a passion about what they've decided to do with the piece, that you go, I completely trust your vision. And even if it doesn't kind of like work out the way they think it is, it's always going to be something incredible. So, and they're also great at putting together people that are going to be able to execute a vision, an idea, and go, does that work? There's always people that are ready to jump in and go, well, that was a bit rubbish, but let's try something else. And the room is so warm and open. There's like, it really is, no idea is a bad idea. So to always go into these productions, which are so iconic, so well known, is terrifying. But when you know you're in such safe hands, it really does feel like the best sort of job in the world, because it's music that you know and love, but also finding a way to make it fresh and current and go, oh my goodness, we've got our own stamp on it. So it's always terrifying, but incredible.
Yeah, and also, I guess when you're not working as well, when you're in Leicester, has that now been a new favorite place for you to go to visit as well when you're not working in Leicester too?
I don't know. It always feels like home when I come back to Leicester, because I'm like, oh, I know it. And then, I mean, they're so kind. Like, I've got pictures on the walls here. So I'm like, oh, it's like I've just come back to my mum's house and my pictures are on the wall. But it's such a lovely building. Like, I walk around and I know like most of the people here. And if there's a new person, you're like, oh, I've not met you before. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm new in the building. So it is a real sort of community family feel in this building. But I can't really say, like, I feel like I've been all over the place, but this is like a constant. I'm always here. And I'll say the Barbican, because I had such a special and wonderful time there. Like, it was amazing. And when I think back, all I have is happy and hilarious memories of the time that I was there with Anything Goes.
Yeah, I mean, Anything Goes was just an absolutely stunning piece, and you were so incredible.
Thank
Well,
you.
yeah, I mean, do you remember where you were and like, how you reacted when you found out that you were nominated for an Olivier as well for your performance?
Yes, I do remember. I was in rehearsals for the second time we were doing Anything Goes in Regent's Park in their rehearsal space. And I was walking through the park And I remember my phone buzzing off, and I was like, "What is going on?" And it basically had said that I'd be, and then my friends were like, "Oh my goodness!" And I was literally in the park. I was like, "What is happening?" And then I rang my mum, and she didn't pick up. I was like, "Great." And then I saw that I'd been nominated with like two of my really good friends. So I rang them. I was like, "What's going on? We've been nominated!" And it was amazing. It was so like incredible and just like baffling. And I was actually going to see the Drifters Girl, which is so random, with my friend, another really good friend, Adrian Hansel, and he's like, "We must have champagne. We must." So that was actually really cool to celebrate with him. He's like, "How do you feel?" I was like, "This is crazy. I do 15 minutes of work in that show, and I've been nominated for an Olivier."
Yeah, I mean, it was glorious, glorious production. I mean, were you surprised at all by, how big it was? It broke all these box office records and, it got this big UK tour as well the following year.
Do you know what? I think part of me wasn't surprised just because we were having such a great time. And I don't mean that in a sort of like conceited, like, of course we're going to be nominated, because I wasn't thinking about that at all. But I think there was part of me was just like, we were all having such an amazing time. And I remember actually having, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but I remember we did the dress run and I invited two really close friends to come and watch the show. I was like, I don't know if it's good. Like, I've got no idea. So you come and watch it and then you let me know. And they're like, it's amazing. It's so sexy how fast it is. It's just so fast paced and it's hilarious. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. And sometimes you think something's good, but you're like, I'm not really sure, because we needed an audience to find us hilarious. So then when they did really enjoy it and everyone was like guffawing at how hilarious it was and just ridiculous, you go, oh, okay. But I think because it felt so good to do, every day you went into work, you were having a great time. You were so happy. My costumes were gorgeous. I was like, what's not to love? So I think when that did happen, it was just kind of like the icing on the cake. It was just like a side thought in a way, because you're like, oh, that's really nice, isn't it? That everyone else is really enjoying what we're doing. So it's amazing. It's something that will always, always stay so close to my heart, because it's something that is so memorable about that time as well.
Yeah, of course. I know that Kathleen Marshall and obviously Sutton Foster, they had previously done the show on Broadway as well. And when they
Hmm.
came over, what were those conversations like, with them on, how to bring this show to a London audience and how to, I guess, make it different to what they did on Broadway too?
Do you know what? I think regardless of if they've done the show before and you bring it somewhere else, I think because you've got such vibrant people and everyone in our industry is so creative, it's always going to be a bit different. And also because it's a London audience, we're not the same as the American audiences that are always like whooping and hollering. We're kind of like, we really listen. And then sometimes I'm like, I'd like you to listen louder sometimes, because my lines are basically comedy lines. So if you're not laughing, I'm like, I'm not very good today. But they were amazing, and you could tell like having them at the helm of our ship, haha, was really good, because it meant that they knew that the pace has to be fast. You can't like indulge in comedy. It has to be fast paced that people go, what? And then realize that something's funny. And before they've even like finished laughing about that, they're laughing about the next thing. So it was really great to have them as like our solid leaders in a show that really requires a strong, sturdy direction. So yeah, it was great to have them.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to ask you about Assassins as well because I love that
Yeah.
production so much. Do you remember? I mean, it's been, obviously this year's a huge election year as well, so I feel like everyone's now talking
Hmm.
about politics again. Do you remember
Hmm.
what it was that drew you to that show and to that role of Lynette Fromme as well?
Um, I don't know what. Actually, I always wanted to work in Chichester, so that was definitely cool. Then I was like, oh, Polly Findlay, she's a great director.
Yeah.
And then also the piece, because I was like, oh, I actually really like that song, and it was something so different from what I'd done. I always like to do things that are so far removed from what the last thing that I did was. So then I think I remember I was super busy that day of my audition. I was just like, I don't have time to learn the song. My monologues in that scene are just like me yappering on. And I was like, I don't have time to learn all this. They're like, it's fine, you don't have to sing the song. And as soon as I went into the audition, like, should we start with the song? But it was a good job that I learned it, because then it was fine. They're like, oh, you sound like an angel. I was like, thank goodness, I'm so tired and I'm a little bit ill. But it was just the sort of piece that I knew that because the cast was going to have to be a really strong one, I thought it's coming from a more acting background. And I always love to do things that I'm kind of like a little bit scared of, that I'm going to have to work harder in, because I always want to improve. So I think it was wanting to work at Chichester, wanting to improve as an actor, knowing that this is an ensemble sort of lead show, which sounds really odd. That's like a juxtaposition in itself.
Mm.
And then when I saw the cast, I was like, yeah, I'm going to learn so much from these people. And it really was another amazing landmark moment in my careers, because I was just like, how am I in the room with these people? I'm one of the assassins. this is incredible. It was just phenomenal. And then my scene partner being Amy Booth Steele, I was like, ridiculous,
Yeah.
because we're just naughty together. Just, it was a stellar cast. Like, it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it really, really was. I mean, it was such a wonderful like reinvention of another like landmark
Mm.
musical too. Were you fairly familiar with Assassins before you went into it? Like, did you know the stories at all, or?
I remember seeing it at the chocolate factory, and I don't remember being like, oh, I know what's kind of like going on in a way that I was like, oh, yes, I know exactly what I'm going into. But I remember enjoying what I watched and thinking it was a moving piece and just something a little bit bizarre. So going into it, when we were kind of reinventing it and, making it out to kind of be like not a carnival and it was an election, I was like, this is really cool. So it was something that you go, I feel like this is really, we all had our our concerns at the beginning because we're like, does this make sense? And that was a really great thing with Polly, because she was like, do you think people are going to understand this? Because we are so close to the piece and we've been doing our beats and text and all this, that you go, oh, okay, we know what's going on. But if someone else sits there, they might be like, what on earth is happening? So it was really interesting to see the evolution of it over time with Polly's original concept, and to be able to bring it to the audiences for them to go, oh my goodness, I know exactly who that is. That's like a nod to Trump, maybe. But it's also a very odd piece because people are doing such great work. But you've got people like Harry Heppel that ends up being hung at the end of his like vaudeville number, and I'm like, why are the audience clapping like profusely? And you realize, oh, he's just been hung, so that's a bit odd, isn't it? Or someone being electrocuted, and I'm like, why are they not clapping? That was amazing. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why, because it is a very sort of like on the like to the bone piece where it's like divisive. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
incredible to do, but also I enjoy the fact that it challenged people in what they thought theatre could be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was only for 3 weeks as well. It was such a
3 weeks.
short run. How did that, how did you feel, at the end of those 3 weeks? Did you feel like, you had, just finished a run of a show as well? Did you feel like you were done with it?
Not at all. I was like, how is it over already? And because it was in Chichester, the weather was beautiful. I was like, we're just on our holidays. It was just like the show was just there to kind of like fill some time, even though it was incredible to do it. Like, I absolutely adored being part of it and being with those people and then basically having a holiday with them. But I always love rehearsals because you're working it out and kind of like figuring things out and what's going to work and really kind of fine tuning the piece. But I think because the rehearsals were longer than the actual performance time, it felt a bit odd and just like shortchanged. But I think because we thought that it might go into town and there was all this talk, that we were just like, oh, it's not the end, and we can like, come back together and be a little family again, a little weird assassins unit. But yeah, it was one of those things where you go, the holidays got to end, so it wasn't all terrible, but it was that thing where you're like, hopefully we'll revisit it.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed. It was such a wonderful production. Clearly, a lot of work
Yeah.
went into it. I know that early on in your career, you'd been part of some really wonderful ensembles in things like
Mm.
Chicago and Hair, Hadestown as well. Do
My
you
goodness, way
remember?
back.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember when that was, if there was a moment for you, and when you realized that you were also able to play principal roles as well, and that you could go on to get Olivier nominations too, and all of that?
I mean, I never thought I'd go on to get an Olivier nomination. Never, and especially for a role that I said caca in. But I remember when I was doing Dreamgirls, that was the moment where, funny enough, was with Jocasta Armgill, who plays Diana Morales, who's a really good friend of mine, who's in a chorus line with me now. And we were both playing the stepsisters at the beginning, which we opened the show in like our fabulous green dresses. And the cover situation on that show was a bit all up in the air, and she was covering Laurel, then she ended up covering Dina. I wasn't even covering Laurel, and I ended up covering that part, and it was all just like topsy-turvy all over the place. And I remember going on, and I'd had maybe like a few rehearsals because I was like a last minute cover, and the buzz on that show was so electric, also terrifying. She's like, I've got so much to say, I've got all these songs and they're really high. And it was the moment I was like, oh yes, I think I'd like to do more of that, please. And it's those moments that make you go, ah. And do you know what's so funny? Yesterday, I said to Jocasta while we were doing our quick change, getting into our gold one singular sensation costumes, I was like, I just thought about us when she's going through the scene about what can you do when you can't dance anymore. I was like, remember us when we were in the ensemble and we were both on for the first time ever as Laurel and Dina, the two of the three dreams, and we came out and the back wall opens and we're in our like dream girls costumes, and we walk down, we get like our lead principal bows, and I remember being like, oh my goodness. And I was like, and now look at us, we're in a chorus line as like these featured parts, and you go, look how far we've come, because that was 2016, and
Mm.
the journey from there to here is incredible. So you go, we need to stop kind of like beating ourselves up about shortcomings or little things, because we have made such a journey from being an ensemble, covering things and then not covering things, and then being like discovering so much about ourselves, that I go, I'm so proud of the journey that we've come on. So to get to where I am now, regardless of nominations and awards and things like that, I go, well done. You did what you set out to when you
Mm.
realized that you could do those things. Because sometimes people don't want to be in the front. They want to have a lovely time whacking their legs, being tree number 3. And that's also incredible because you get to play more actually. You don't have so much responsibility. You don't have to like worry about your voice too much. But it is that thing where I'm so proud of everything that I've accomplished and put myself forward for, and gone, actually, I do like that.
Yeah. Has there been one moment for you which you've been particularly proud of as well when you look back?
No, there's so many sometimes when you're just like, what? I remember when I did my first Laurel performance, that was incredible because I was like, oh my goodness. And I think everyone finally was like, oh, I didn't know that you could do that. I was like, I didn't really. And I'm glad that I know now because that was really fun. I also had a great time, obviously, in Anything Goes. That was just one of those things, just like, I didn't realize I was funny. And people saying, oh my God, you're a comedian. No, I'm not. I was like, no, that's not a thing. No, we're not a comedian. You can't just like take ownership of something that's like got huge skill and talent to do. But also, I love Gypsy. There's so many things. Like I was even proud when I was doing Memphis because that is such a dance-heavy show
Mm.
that it was the first time that I was able to realize that you go, even if you're in the ensemble, you still have a part to play. You still have to have a character. You still have to have a presence in a relationship to all the people on stage. It's not just go and stand there and just do rhubarb. It's literally they have to be fleshed out characters. And I always thank Christopher Ashley for allowing us as ensemble members to go, oh, we have space to take up here. We are fully invested. Just because we might not have character names that have been given to us, we're able to go, I've decided I'm called Cece. How original. My name is Carly and I've gone Cece. Terrible. But yeah, there's so many. And I will always be proud of Memphis and so many things. Even Chicago, my first Western job at 22 and being like that, I'm in Chicago. What? That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Gypsy, which I came along to as well, Alexandra Palace. That was, of course, a one night only event. How was that experience for you, getting to, put on that wonderful concert?
Insane. Absolutely insane. I was like, I've won a competition because who am I in the room with? I was like, are you kidding? 7 mummers and they're all
Mm.
phenomenal. I was like, what? This is wild. And then obviously to have Laura Pitt Polford playing my sister, Danny Collins, right? I was like, everybody. And for me, the thing that blew my mind so much is, Ebony Molina, Alexis Owen Hobbs, Rachel Stanley, who were playing, the 3 strippers.
Yeah.
I remember watching Sweet Charity at, where was it? At the Haymarket, I think, and being looking at Ebony Molina and being like, I want to be you. And I did Chicago with Alexis Owen Hobbs and thinking, I don't understand how she's so intelligent when she's doing these like moves. She's doing Fosse, but she's like hanging out the laundry. I was like, I must be these human beings. They're so incredible. So for them to be in a show together that I'm in singing I'm a moo cow, I was just like, it was so good. And I mean, doing this podcast with you is amazing because I get to relive and reinvigorate myself to go, what? I've done some mad things, but also things that have really given me that resurgence and inspiration to go, wow. To just even, I was sharing a dressing room with them, and I shared a dressing room with Alexis before when we did Chicago, but to be there again and still have that giddy feeling of being like, oh my God, you're my inspiration is incredible because you're like, oh my gosh, yeah. So you've helped me. But this evening, I'm going to be like, it's for them. Channel them when you think that you've got nothing left inside of you to dance around and sing again. Channel them because they are incredible women that have truly shaped me into the performer that I am today. And I can only thank them for that.
Yeah, I mean, they've had amazing careers as well. They really just show
Mm,
you how, the end is not coming, there's still a long way
no.
to go.
Yeah. They said, oh, I'm going to have some kids. And they're like, I'm back. How about this? Oh, goodness. Show me the way. It's amazing. Yeah. But I mean, I don't think I really spoke about making Gypsy, but that was incredible because it was such a short period of time. I
Mm.
think I had maybe 2 or 3 days rehearsals. And then when we did our sort of like run through, we had the cast of And Juliet watching. I was like, I kind of wanted to work out what I was doing in this and then do it for the show. But it was one of those things where The adrenaline was so high. They were all really supportive, and it actually really helped to have them there for the first performance, because when it came to the second actual paying audience, the adrenaline was a little bit lower, which was good because otherwise I was going to be on the roof. And it was just amazing. I can't remember. I think someone said maybe it was like Ian McKellen was coming to see the show. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But those are the sort of situations where you're like, here we go. You just got to, what did my friend say? Josh Lay in a chorus line said, just jump and theatre will catch you. I was like, will it? So I was like, I'll take it. We'll see what happens. So yeah, it's great to just throw yourself into those things sometimes. And also, it's just a musical. We'll see what happens. And the audience loves to see things when they go a bit wrong.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're so right about all of that. Yeah, it's been so lovely talking to you. Just as the last question, what would you say is the best part about being Carly Mercedes Dyer?
That people keep hiring me. And that they continue to like my work. I think that's one of the hard things, though, even though you said what's the best thing. I think the hard thing is when people have enjoyed your work before, you feel like, oh my goodness, is this the thing that they're like, oh, that was terrible. So it's like trying to keep up with yourself sometimes that you're like, keep doing a good job. We need to stop putting that pressure on ourselves because we're only human. We're only human.
Yeah, really well said. Carly Mercedes Dyer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.